any members of the public. For those that are in the room, including me, make sure you turned your phone onto silent, which I've not done, so I'll obey my own orders first. I can find it. Okay. Anyone who is participating remotely, please can you make sure you've switched your camera off and your mic is off unless you are intending to speak. Can I also advise you that this meeting is being recorded and data collected during the meeting will be retained in accordance with Swelborough Council's data retention policy, and the recording of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. Members accessing the meeting remotely should use their SBC or KCC laptop to participate virtually. Otherwise, joining us via the link on the website or a mobile or a tablet device is not always possible to identify you, and you may not be recorded as in remote attendance. Members, make sure you please speak loudly and clearly into your microphones and switch your microphone off after speaking. Otherwise, we may not hear the next speaker. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Regeneration and Property Committee meeting, including those in remote attendance, members and officers, as well as members of the public. So I'm going to advise you who is in attendance here. We have Estates Officer Eva Harris, who's sat on the far end of the bench at the front here. We have the Head of Regeneration, Economic Development and Property, Joanne Johnson, and she's also the Interim Head of Planning. We also have the Interim Property Services Manager, I've just promoted you, you'll love that, David Johnson, and Democratic Services, we have Kelly Mackenzie. So there isn't a planned fire drill. If the fire alarm sounds, those in attendance should leave via the exits indicated. Assemble outside when directed to. Do not use the lift. Anyone in attendance who requires assistance, make themselves known. Anyone? That's a big fat no. Thank you. Okay, apologies for absence and confirmation of substitutes. Do we have any, Kelly?
Thank you, Chair. There are no apologies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any declarations of interest to make? No? Great, thank you. Members, can we please approve the minutes of the last meeting held on the 6th of July 2023, minute numbers 183 to 193 as the correct records? We all agree? Everyone agree, that's unanimous, thank you. Okay, the following items are Part B reports for decision by the Regeneration and Property Committee. So item 5, this is the disposal of Minster Community Centre, New Road, Sheerness. And if I can ask the officer to please introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. With your leave, Chair, I don't propose to read the whole report. If that's okay, I'll give you a précis. So the property in question was subject to a lease in 2017 to Minster.
Chairman, sorry, just a point of clarification. Apologies for interrupting, David. There is a new road in Sheerness and there is a new road in Minster on the IP. And for clarity, we're talking about new road in Minster in Sheppey, not Sheerness.
That's correct.
Yeah, absolutely, as per the plan attached to the report as well, which also sets that up. So.
Thank you for the clarification. As I was saying, the property is subject to a lease in 2017 to Minster Community Centre, who occupied the building until COVID, at which point they closed. They placed a second-hand porta cabin on the site. It was believed that this porta cabin was about 10 years old at that point, for use by themselves. Post-COVID, the community centre never reopened, and the estates team tried to contact the trustees of the community centre to see whether they wanted to continue occupying. Their lease expired, and we could not contact any of the trustees, so the property was taken back at the expiration of the lease by the council. We've undertaken an inspection of the property with estimated repair costs, which the report is attached to this report on the appendix, with an estimation of repair somewhere between £200,000 and £400,000 to put it in use again. Although the report author did note that he considered it to be beyond its reasonable life expectancy, and an estimation of somewhere around £700,000 or £1,000 to replace the building. We did commission an evaluation, which is attached, and the details of which are on the exempt paper. But the proposals, therefore, as we don't have the capital available to repair or replace the facility, are set out in the proposal section. And if it's okay with you, Chair, I will read those. So the recommendations are that the land between 53 and 59 New Road, Minster, be declared surplus and placed on the open market to effect a freehold disposal, and that the authority is delegated to the head of Regeneration, Economic Development and Property and interim head of planning in consultation with the head of Mid-Kent Legal Services to negotiate a freehold sale of the property and to complete the necessary legal formalities. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Has any members got any questions to kick off or that they would like to ask? I know there's a visiting member who might like to speak. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't seen the hand flag up yet. Yep. So I will ask the visiting member and then I'll bring in Councillor Tucker. So Elliot Jays, Councillor Jays.
Thank you, Chair. As members should know, this is in my ward. This is one of 3 community centres Minster has. The other one being, others being Thistle Hill Community Centre and Friendship House. Thistle Hill Community Centre has leaked ever since the council took it over and passed it over to a trust. So I'd like to make I'd hope that members in the room would be willing to make a proposal that this committee recommends to Policy and Resources that all monies from the sale of the New Road Community Centre plot be ring-fenced to repair or replace the roof at Thistle Hill Community Centre to enable Minster to continue to have an operational community centre. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I might ask you if I can ask the officer to come in about ring fencing any monies around any sale.
Thank you. Yes, happy to. So as Councillor Jay's indicated, the most we could do as a committee would be to recommend that to Policy and Resources. It's not our ability in this committee to determine whether anything should be ring fenced for any particular purpose when we recommend a disposal. That could be an amendment should members wish to make that. I think we would need to note we don't yet know the costs of repair for the roof at Thistle Hill Community Centre. I would suggest that ring fencing all of the money may not be correct because we don't know what the costs are. But if members wished to ring fence part of the money, that is within the gift to recommend. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jays, did you want to come back on that? Because I see your hands up before I move on to the committee members.
No, I just haven't taken it down. Sorry, Chair.
That's all right, good, lovely. Councillor Tucker, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just reading the report and I just want to take, I don't know if it's typos or I'm missing something. It said that the council allowed the porter cabin to be erected in 2020 and it was already 10 years old. And then they ceased trading, as it were, in 2020 during the pandemic. It's then aged 20 years, it's now 30 years old. And it was suitable then, but now it's not suitable 3 and a bit years later when we've done a condition survey on it. So I find that rather strange. And just the costings that are in there to remove it, make it better, and to produce a new one are astonishing. I know probably the council don't buy from things like eBay and such like, but I know there's other interested parties, and obviously being a member of Central Ward, 3 officers are fully aware of people that have been in touch, involving nurseries and such like that are happy to take it over as a going concern. And certainly with the rent to income, and I've highlighted some, I think it was 13,000 was predicted. They're currently paying 18, 19 and happy to pay towards £2,000 a month, which would be £24,000 a year that would come to the council. I just think it could be considered first if it could be repaired or someone wants to take it over as is, as in a going concern, before we release it to be sold. Thank you.
Yep, I'm going to ask the officers to come in here because I think there's several points in your comments there that we will try and break down as we may.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies if I have to come back to you to go over those points again. Firstly, I'd like to apologise. My dyslexia gets in my way. Sometimes it is a typo. It should have been 1997 that the Porter Cabin was erected, making it roughly 30 years old at that point. With regard to the valuation, it was done externally by Red Book valuers, and I've got no reason to contradict what they've set out in their valuation. With regard to the condition and state of the property and whether it can be used moving forward, qualified building surveyor's assessment is beyond reasonable use, although I pushed them to include a figure to talk about the repair cost. You're almost talking about replacing the vital components of the building. That's why it's so high, and I would consider that there'd be a risk to the council, both reputationally and to the occupier, in terms of the condition of the property not being able to be guaranteed long term. So we'd be putting a building back together that would not have a reasonable life expectancy and then leasing it, and the risk of that then us falling foul of that, the quality of that building not being maintainable, excuse me, for the duration of the lease. I would not be advising you to lease it out on that basis. I think I might have covered all the points, but if I haven't, please let me know.
Okay, Councillor Tucker, would you like to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the point making that the lease was granted, that they put the Porter Cabin on, they maintained it, they insured it, hence the peppercorn rent. So why can't that continue? But with not a peppercorn rent, I think is the synopsis of my question.
Come in.
Thank you, Chair. And I think my answer would still be very much the same, that the risk to us reputationally and the risk to the tenant in terms of taking a building that is not maintainable for the duration of the lease, regardless of the rent being payable, would not mean that I'd recommend it to be leased. You've got to think these prefabricated buildings have a life expectancy. So at this point in time, we could do the recommended works, upgrade the electrics, repair the damp works, possibly recover the roof, for example, but in essence, the fabric of the building does not have a long life expectancy left in it. So there's little point in doing those works, knowing that other parts of the building will fail because of the nature of the construction. That's why it's not a recommendation, regardless of the rent that would be being paid. And I suspect that whoever we lease it to would be back to the council saying, you leased us a property which is not maintainable because of the condition it was in when we took it. And I would do that if I was commercially taking a lease on a property.
And I would add to that is we've got other assets that we've transferred over to parties, and I think the other councillor mentioned one of them, where that has manifested itself and it has left that party in quite a difficult position. As you said, it will come back to the council and bite us in the long term. So I think what we have before us is a fair report there on the summary of the condition and the sort of the long-term investability, as it were, in this property.
I was just still suggesting that they take total ownership of it and it's nothing to do with the council, and they take, their chances, as it were. That was only what had been said to me, what they'd like to do. So
Yeah. Okay. David, come back.
given that we're proposing that we put the property on the open market, anybody who's interested in it can come forward with any proposal to be considered. And at that point, that's the reason the report is drawn as it is, so that the council has no further liability for it. And that is all put on the commercial occupier. And there has been commercial occupiers interested in the property. There may be other beneficial uses that can be put to. And again, that's the purpose of the report, so that rather than it sit here, it does go back into a useful condition and the council's liabilities are reduced. And Chair, can I ask for your leave to comment on Thistle Hill? Just with regard to that, that's exactly the situation my recommendations in this report are trying to avoid, where the council it thinks it is in a position where it has no liabilities relating to a building, but actually, because of the nature of the transaction, it comes back to the council in due course at cost, both in monetary terms and reputationally. And it would be my thoughts to consider that in any ideas in terms of ring fencing the funds from this sale.
Fully understood. Thank you, David. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. I've got Councillor Whiting. Any other members wishing to speak after Councillor Whiting? Okay, Councillor Whiting.
Just a comment. I appreciate what David said, Chairman, which is good. I would hope that we're not going to get embroiled in a who wants to buy it and what do they want to do with it argument. If they come up with £200,000 or 300,000 or 500,000 pounds, whatever the money might be, we just sell it. We don't get involved in what we want to do with or what we would want them to do with the property. That'd be my first thing. I understand what Councillor Jays is saying. I don't believe that it's right and proper at this stage to be ring fencing a capital receipt in the way that has been suggested. And if that wants to be put to a proposal to P&R, that's a different matter, but not one we should consider this evening. Thank you.
I'd just like to point out that the recommendation here is a freehold disposal, which would be an entire disposal of the parcel of land. So it would be completely arm's length, and we shouldn't be held up in any debate as to what that purchaser intends to do with the land. Members, does anyone want to offer any thoughts around ring fencing that was put forward by the local member? I mean, I understand the ask, and I do have a degree of sympathy that where we're selling an asset that is a community asset, that actually some of that money should be retained back within the community for a community asset. I think at the moment it's difficult to ring fence a specific amount until we've identified what the costs are and the need is within that community. So to my mind, from the point of what happens to that capital sum, at the moment it would go back into our capital and wouldn't be allocated. It would be unusual for it to be ring fenced. However, I think I have a degree of sympathy for that request, and it would be interesting to understand across the committee if there is a degree of sympathy for that, and then we can think about that going forwards as to what may happen. Any members want to speak? Councillor Whiting?
Yeah, just back then, if there was a proposal to this committee to do what's being suggested, it should have come through the normal process and been put forward in some way, so we could either as an official amendment to something or a proposal. That hasn't happened. So standing orders wouldn't allow us to consider this anyway. And if the member wants to put that forward to P&R, then that's a perfectly valid thing to do. But it's not valid, I don't think, under standing orders that we should be considering it tonight.
Councillor Kavanagh?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know about the Thistle Hill Community Centre. It's difficult because we haven't got the information here that we need. I mean, I don't know. Sorry, I've forgotten your name. David. I don't know whether it still belongs to us, whether it belongs to the community centre. We don't know how much it is. Could we not I don't know if it's possible. Could we not revisit it once it's sold and then discuss it? Because if we've got figures, and also what is the state of the building? If the building, David, is very similar to this one, but maybe a few years younger, is there any point throwing any more money at it if it then continues to fall apart? There's so many unknown things, but maybe not ring fence it, but just revisit it before this money, when it's sold, has been allocated to something else. Thank you.
David, would you like to come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. You'll have to forgive me, I'm talking from memory, and it's a long time since I've read the lease, but it's my understanding that it's in our freehold ownership. It's been leased on a long lease to the community group, and that lease is a fully insuring and repairing lease. So it is the community's responsibility, community group's responsibility to maintain that building, hence my previous comments on the matter. And I think what you're suggesting is exactly what's been suggested by other members in terms of going to policy and resources at that point. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the difficulty lies that there's an inherent design construction defect that has been there since day one that unfortunately wasn't identified until later on, and has become a substantial problem now for that particular trust. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, right, members, I think we've hit the conclusion of that debate. So let's vote on this. So we're going to go with the recommendation as printed on the papers. So can I ask those all in favour? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, sorry, I'll propose it. And is there a seconder? Yes, Sarah Stephen, Councillor Sarah Stephen. Okay, sorry, let's do the vote again. Right, okay, all those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Oh. No, sorry. Did you vote? Sorry, one abstention. Thank you. Okay, so that proposal is carried. Sorry, Councillor Tucker. That's all right. It is late, but I think that's covered in the report with the valuation that the officer has looked at what the demolition costs are and what the value is, the market value, and whether you factor that in. I mean, it's a straight through normally. It's straight through. So someone purchasing it would factor that into what they would pay. Oh, good. I'm glad I'm correct on that. But anyway, we're beyond the debate, but I've been courteous enough to take that on board. Right. OK, item 6. This is the utilities contract procurement of energy supplies. So I'd like the officer, please, to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. So there are 3 recommendations in this report with regard to our future purchasing of energy supplies. Number 1, that we continue to purchase energy via the laser buying group for a 2-year renewing basis. The second recommendation is that we continue to purchase renewable energy via that same framework. That it comes at an estimated additional total cost of around £30,000 per year. And then the third recommendation is a delegation of authority to myself in consultation with the head of finance and procurement and the chair of the committee to vary the contract during the term. And as I go through the report, I'll set out why we recommend that variation. So we currently purchase our energy through a framework with Laser, who we are recommended to continue with. That agreement expires on the 30th of September next year. We are not just hideously ahead of ourselves. It is usual for purchases to have a supplier in place approximately a year in advance of supply, as that commitment historically is what secures the best value from the market. The Laser buying group is a recognised framework that we can access that's perfectly acceptable through our policy framework and our contract standing orders. It's a group that was set up by Kent County Council, their commercial services unit, quite some time ago, And currently that group purchases energy on behalf of over 200 public sector bodies. You can see in table 2.7 the costs of gas and electricity and how they have risen in an eye-watering fashion over the last 3 years, which shines a spotlight on why it is very important for us to get this right. It is a large financial commitment. As part of the process of looking at the recommendations going forwards, we approached a number of organisations, including another framework supplier and a broker. Despite repeated attempts to get adequate information from them for us to make a comparative decision, that hasn't been forthcoming. So we do not have a full comparison to present to you today. We have the indication that if it is very difficult to get information when we are perhaps trying to secure business, it may be a difficult relationship going forward. And based on what we've received from the other frameworks, from what we know, laser still remains, we believe, the favourable framework. Looking at other options considered and rejected, they do offer a 4-year contract that could potentially offer a greater financial saving. We don't recommend that at this point in time because of the limited information we've had from other potential providers. We could not secure a renewable energy supply, and that would keep the cost down. That would save, in this domain, approximately £30,000. That needs to be balanced against the council's targets for net zero and our commitments to offset. If we weren't purchasing the renewable supplies, we would be required to offset something else, and that could easily cost £30,000 or in excess of that. There is an option not to renew with an overarching provider and to have individual relationships for each of our premises. That is not recommended, as that then wouldn't allow us to access wholesale prices. It's estimated that the framework that we used to date has achieved cost avoidance for the authority slightly below £75,000 a year. So individual arrangements would not allow us to achieve that cost saving. In terms of consultation, we have spoken to the head of finance and procurement. She's very much on board with this approach. And I think that is probably everything by way of introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any members wish to speak on this? Councillor Whiting?
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to the delegation, I'm fully in favour of that. Let's get it done. I'm not sure it needs to be in with consultation with the committee chair. If the committee delegates the authority through the normal scheme to the officers to get on with it, then let's just get on with it. The only amendment I would make was to just remove the political influence. If we make the decision here tonight to delegate the authority to officers, let's just do that. And why would we want to include a consultation with the committee chair if the officers felt it was good? There's no disrespect to you, Chairman, at all. It's and I'll say the same at many other committee meetings when I'm able to. It's just, if we're going to delegate the authority, let's just delegate the authority. And I'm fully in favour of doing that. And the officers can then get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's a question of renewables. I may be way off base, and I stand to be corrected, or I might have been dreaming this, but when the renovations of the building started, I believe there was plans to, or there was talk of putting PV panels on the roof of the building, which would obviously, in the long term, give us, sort of 90% sustainability. Or it's obviously we'd have to change over maybe from gas to all electric for the building. But what has happened to that?
Okay, so when we, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, when we undertook the works or started the works on this building, the work that was done to the roof on Swell House was to enable that panels could be put on there, because the way it was, well, it was in poor condition for a start, and it leaked like a sieve. So the way the roof was treated and repaired, it was in such a fashion that we could at some point. Now, obviously, it requires capital to put solar panels in. That wasn't part of setup, and that we would look to see if that was something we could do in the future, or whether it was something we could gain grant funding for, or work with a community power company in which to put that on the roof. So it's not there yet, but it's something that I know the officers are keeping an eye on. But you can come in and fill in the rest.
Okay, thank you. And to add to that, in terms of with the solar panels, wherever they're located, if we do go down that route, the demand obviously would reduce our purchasing of the energy through laser, and that won't affect any of our costs in that respect. They would be happy to continue as long as we give them notice of the reduction of demand.
Great, thank you. So we've got the flexibility in there, is what we're saying, should we install solar. Councillor Tucker?
In regards to the solar panels, we're paying an extra £30,000 per annum to make sure that we're buying electricity and the gas from the right sources and it's green and all the rest of it. Can we not put that 30,000 towards solar panels and then meet our requirements that way? Or am I missing something? Thank you.
I'm going to bring in Joanne here.
Yeah,
answer that.
thank you. I'll do my best on that one. So to what extent solar would offset an equivalent amount of the uplift we're paying for the contract would be a question for somebody that works in that specialist area. But absolutely, it's something that could be considered. Officers have been working on a baseline report that looks at the viability of solar for a number of the council-owned properties and looks at a very early assessment of what the payback period for that would be. And that report will be coming to members at some point in the future. And absolutely, part of that will be looking at what that offsets in terms of our carbon emissions and where we stand with other offsetting actions that we're currently committed to or may commit to in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Stephen?
Yeah, it's just obviously it's at the time at the moment we're up to obviously eye-watering costs with the bills, and also having that flexibility if we do get some income to do the solar panels. I feel that we just need short-term agreements because we could pull out at any time if we get the flexibility to get the solar panels.
Thank you. And I think it was quite reassuring. I was talking to a tenant of Swales, and they went to get electric prices, and actually I think they found that this contract at the moment was the cheapest provider. So actually it's a benefit for the council as well as for any tenants that within our building, which actually saying is an attraction if they rent any space off us, and we should be rentalising that to be mercenary, and we have to be.
Sorry, Chair, if I can interrupt to add to that as well. I have subsequently had some further figures in from the report going in published, and I've worked out with just the procurement of the unit price of the energy, laser compared to CCS, you're looking at about just shy of 100k a year in just costs of less than what it would be if we went through Crown Commercial Services framework.
So that's a good saving. So I think it speaks volumes. Okay, Councillor Whiting.
Just to propose, if I may, Chair, through you, that we accept the 3 recommendations, but with the slight amendment I made, that we don't refer it back to us as politicians, that we just let the officers get on with it. So that will be a slight amendment to remove any reference to the chair of the committee from the recommendations, and that we just move forward. That'll be my recommendation.
Do you have a seconder? Okay. Does anyone want to speak to that? I mean, personally, as chair, I'd actually it's in consultation, so I'm not approving it. It is in consultation, and I would actually like to be consulted that we've entered into the contract. So, yes, but I chair the committee, you don't. Thank you. So any members wish to debate the amendment? Okay, so first of all, I need to propose I'm going to propose the the recommendations of this report. So if I can have a seconder for that first. Okay, Sarah Stevens, and then you want to propose an amendment. Yeah, and you're a seconder. Okay, we're going to vote now on the amendment. So those in favour of the amendment. That's 4. Okay, those against. Thank you. 10. Okay, so that falls. We go back to the original proposal. Does anyone, have you finished on the original? Councillor Tucker, you wanted to come in, and then I've got Councillor Clark. Okay, fine. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just briefly, I mean, looking through the recommendations again, it does say under recommend 1 that we're on 2-year renewing basis. So we're not tied in for a full 4 years. So if in 18 months' time we've got the money through whatever means to put the PVs on the roof, then we're not tied in for another 3.5 years. Good.
Thank you, and I agree wholeheartedly with your comments. Okay, let's go to the vote then. Those in favour of the recommendations as set out in the paper? 12. Okay, those against? 1. Those abstaining? 1. Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much, members. Okay, let's go on to item 7, the forward plan. Is it a short list? Anyone wish to speak to the forward plan? Sorry, Councillor, yes, come in.
Yeah, my question really relates to the forward plan with Central Stadium.
Yep.
In terms of, I understood it was before the committee tonight, but it's been delayed. 2 questions is, 1, when will it come before the committee? And 2, why has it been delayed?
Okay. Joanne, would you like to come in on that one?
Yeah, thank you very much. It has been delayed because of information that officers believe members would need to make a decision. One aspect of that is around the playing pitch strategy, which was due to go to a previous committee cycle and to be approved. That's been delayed. So until the playing pitch strategy is approved, we don't know what we're playing with, no pun intended, in terms of the use of the land that may be required or not required. And also we are seeking some further information around the covenant. So in terms of when that will come back to committee, ASAP as far as the playing pitch side of things goes, because that I believe is coming to the next committee cycle. In terms of the covenant, we've got legal involved. As long as a piece of string, we are pushing that to go as quickly as possible. I don't know if David wants to comment on time frame. No, yeah, we're in the hands of third parties for the covenant side of things, but we are working hard to get information through. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whiting?
On the same point, really, because this particular parcel of land has been the subject of discussion for probably 2 years now. So I find it quite difficult to understand why we don't have a definitive legal view on the covenants. I'm told that we've asked for a view, and my understanding is that legal don't have a view at the moment, and we're seeking a view elsewhere. But that's taken a very long time. The difficulty at first was we didn't understand, or we hadn't agreed what percentage of the land we would want to retain for sports use, which is what the covenant says. My understanding is now that we do understand that, because we know that other parts of the council don't want pieces of the land for their own use, and they may be fit for disposal. So it seems to me.
Can we be careful about how we discuss this? Because this has been subject, and actually should be discussing the item, we should be talking about the timing, okay?
So I'm trying to be very careful about what I'm saying. But we are in a much better position now to understand, even if we had it as a blue paper report this evening, which may have been a sensible way forward. We are in a better position now to understand where we are with this particular disposal, and it seems to me that we're just throwing it back into the long grass. And so in answer to the question opposite, I agree we should be setting a time on this, and I think that we should be bringing it back to the November committee, and that if necessary, all that's on blue paper if it need be. But there's no need for further delay, because there are third parties with an interest in this, and I have no claim to support any particular third party, but I know there are third parties with interest, and it would be good to get this sorted, and not least because we as a council, Chair, have no money. And moving forward, if we don't deal with things like this and the other assets on the disposal list, then somebody from central government will come in and just make the decisions for us and say, sell, or do whatever it wants to do. So I think we are in a position where we need to move forward with this and the other disposals that may sit in the forward plan as quickly as we can, so that we as local members have a say in what's going to happen, and not just invite the government the government to step in and make those decisions for us. So I do think we should bring this back to November if we can, please.
Thank you. Firstly, a point of information is that when we sell assets, it's capital. And we are in effect getting rid of any income that is attached to it. And actually, what this council right now needs is income, not capital, but it needs income to pay its daily and monthly bills. And